going to do this morning is demonstrate to you a full pre-trip inspection, as would be required by you by ICBC on test day. The first thing we're going to do is our pre-trip begins as we approach the vehicle, because we get the overall picture of the vehicle. Once we approach the vehicle or get to the vehicle, we're going to block the wheels to ensure the safety of the vehicle and yourself. So I'll get the blocks out of the side compartment here. And we'll block the wheels at the front and the back of the vehicle, ensuring that the vehicle cannot move. The second step here is to drain the wet tank. First you have to identify the wet tank, and that's easily done by simply draining a little bit of air from each tank, finding out which one affects the gauges. When you find the one that does not affect the gauge, you have the wet tank. Continue on to drain it. Ensure that the tank is drained completely before you release it. Once the air has been drained out of your wet tank, the next step is to open the hood and to do your mechanical inspection under the hood. What we're going to be looking at is all belts, hoses, and fluid levels. Check the belts, ensure that there's no cracks in the belts, no loose frayed threads. The hoses, we're going to check and make sure there's no cuts, bulges, or tears in the hoses, and that all the clamps are tight. Looking for obvious leaks on the engine block as well. The next step is to open the hood. First thing you want to do is place your foot on the bumper or someplace secure to give you the leverage. Grab the handle at the top of the hood, which is provided for you, and commence pulling over. As you pull over, make sure you cup the hood so that it doesn't fall over on top of you. As we check under the hood, I'm going to start at the back on the top and work my way back and forth. Starting at the top here, I'm checking to ensure that the hoses or these big pipes are secure. Okay? And they are secure, and the clamps over on this side are all secure, and there's no signs of leaks of anything that's there. Okay. Carrying on, going to the front of the engine, I've got a hose here. I'm checking to make sure there's no damage to the hose and the hose clamps are tight and there's no leaks. Right here is the radiator. I want to check and ensure that the radiator itself is securely mounted. I'm going to check to the front of the radiator to make sure that there's nothing blocking the airflow to that radiator. Now coming along more in the center of the engine, right in here I've got a fan. I don't know if you can see the fan from here, but there is a fan. I want to check all the blades on the fan to ensure that they're all in good condition. I've got a fan belt here coming off the alternator. I'm going to check it by tugging on it and giving it a little twist, checking to make sure there's no cracks in the fan belt and there's no frays on the belt itself. Next is the alternator. The alternator here is securely mounted if I give it a shake, and checking the wires to ensure that they're securely mounted on there as well. Also, you might look and ensure that there's no corrosion on the terminal. Coming along more to the center here, checking all these pipes, hoses, ensuring there's no damage to any of them, no signs of leaks. Up here is the turbocharger right in this area here. I want to give it a wiggle as well and ensure it's secure. Now also there's a couple of lubricating lines, so I want to ensure that there's no leaks up in this area. Carrying right onto the back, the exhaust, everything is secure back here. Appears to be okay. Now I'm going to go down a little lower and I can see the block of the engine. Ensure that there's no oil leaking down the block of the engine as well. Everything in here seems to be secure and tight. Right in here, I don't know if you can see it, there's a filter there. As far as filters go, all I want to do is ensure that they are secure and there's no leaks in the filter. And that appears to be the case here. Continuing on, hoses and clamps are secure. This is a radiator support, so I want to make sure it's tight as well. I'm going to move straight forward here. You won't be able to see it, but there are some wires going to my front headlights. And just checking to make sure there's no loose wires and everything appears to be in good condition there. Going down a little further now, on the frame itself, right here is mounted an air dryer. Okay, that's the first tank basically after the compressor. So I want to check and ensure that it's secure. All the lines going to and from are secure as well. Along the frame, this red section here, checking all the bolts, all the heads of the bolts, making sure there's no twists in the frame, no cracks in them. A sure sign that something has gone wrong is possibly seeing a little bit of rust coming down from one of the heads of the bolt, which may tell you that it's loose or there could be a crack in that area. Further back, mounted on the frame, is the shock absorber, the upper mount. I'll give it a wiggle with my hand and ensure that it's nice and tight. Right behind it is another filter, The filter itself is securely mounted. The lines leading to and from are in good condition. The filter itself is secure with no signs of leaks. Next, we're going to go down a little further below the frame into the suspension of the vehicle. We want to check the leaf springs to ensure that there's no cracks in the leaf springs and that the leaf springs are all in alignment. We're also going to check the mounting points of the leaf springs. By using a little hammer, we can tap them. Tap the spring hangers, come along the spring to the U-bolts. The U-bolts are what hold everything together, and we'll give those a little tap as well to ensure that they're nice and tight. Back here I've also got a shock, the lower shock mount, give it a wiggle as well. Follow the spring along to ensure that there's no signs of cracks or misalignment. Once that's done, we're going to come back into the center area here and we're going to work our way out to the wheel. Right here you can see that this line here, there's an air line. It's an air line to the front brake chambers. Ensure that it is flexible and securely mounted. Because it's on a steering axle, it must be able to flex. Coming to the brake chamber next, give the chamber a good wiggle, ensure that it's nice and tight. Next I'm going to go to the brake adjustment procedure, or check. So I take my brake buddy, place it over top of this slack adjuster, and pull on the slack adjuster. What I'm looking for is a movement of a ½ an inch to a maximum of 3/4 of an inch. Any more than that would tell me that I need to adjust the brakes. Okay. Alright, knowing that the brake has been adjusted properly, I'm going to check the inside of the wheel and the tire assembly. Ensure that there's no oil leaks on the inside of the wheel. The rim itself is in good condition without any cracks or damage to it. The inside of the tire, check it with your hand and ensure that there's no cuts, bulges, or tears in the tire. Next, you come to the tread of the tire and ensure that the tread is wearing evenly and there's sufficient tread on the tire. Once that's done, continue right to the outside of the tire by checking the outside of the tire, ensuring that there's no cuts, bulges, or tears or visible damage. Check the rim next. Look at the rim to make sure there's no cracks in the rim, no signs of damage there. Also check all your lug nuts by placing your hand on it and checking to ensure all nuts are tight. Finally, on the outside of the wheel here, this one here has a cover on it, but if it did not have a cover, you would see a clear plastic hub that's filled with oil. All you have to do is ensure that that is checked once a week by the school. And then we'll carry on to the next side. To begin on this side, I'm going to start at the very top here. I've got my air filter here. I want to check and ensure all the clamps are on tight, and they seem to be that way. The air filter itself is secure. Moving along, I'm going to come up here to the radiator, ensure that it's secure. These hoses and clamps are tight as well. No signs of damage. Carrying on, checking all these hoses, clamps, everything appear to be tight. Next thing I see on this one here is this piece here, which is the governor for the compressor. Remember, the governor is found at different positions on all trucks. This one here happens to be nice and high so you can see it. Check and ensure that the lines coming to and from are secure and the governor itself is secure. Coming along to the back here, I've got other hoses, lines, electrical lines. Everything is secure. Also checking all along as I'm going along, checking to ensure that there's no leaks on the block of the engine. Coming to the back, up onto the firewall here, checking to ensure that there's no broken lines, no loose wires. Everything appear to be in good condition. Checking up here, we've got some more electrical connections, ensure that they're in good condition as well. Coming down a little lower right here, I've got a windshield washer fluid reservoir, and I can see the level in the reservoir is adequate for today. Also, whenever I'm checking a fluid level such as this, I want to ensure that the container is securely mounted and there's no associated leaks with that container. Carrying on along here a little further, I come to this red thing here, which is my power steering reservoir. Check and ensure that it is secure, and then I'm going to check the fluid level into the itself. Open up the top, and we're going to check the fluid level. It's lined or marked just like it would be on your oil dipstick. Ensure that that's at a full level. Insert it, pull it out again, check it, and it should be full. When you tighten down these type of connectors here or caps, ensure that you do not over tighten them. Now, you can't see it, but in behind here on the back of this engine is the oil dipstick. I'm going to check the oil by pulling the dipstick out, Wipe it off first, just like you would on your car. Check the line, dip it in. All right, dip it in, pull it out, and I can see that the oil level is sufficient and it's within the safe mark for today. All right, please remember too, when you're checking the oil and you're wiping off the dipstick, don't use the gloves, use a piece of paper towel or something like that, so you don't transfer that oil onto the steering wheel or other parts of the vehicle. Carrying on, this main line coming out here that you see, a stainless steel braided line, that's the main discharge line for the compressor. So if I follow it down, I can find the compressor. All I want to do is check and ensure that it's securely mounted and there's no oil leaks associated with it. And it is that. Continuing on, I've got other hoses and things. Everything appear to be in good shape. Coming right to the front, again, here is the fan. I want to check all the blades of the fan. And if it is a freewheeling fan, such as this one, check and ensure that it does spin freely. Got some other belts and other hoses in here. Just going to check them and ensure that everything is in good condition. All in here. Radiator support. The cowling on the radiator itself around the fan is secure. And come to the radiator on this side and ensure that there's nothing blocking the front of that one as well. Down a little lower here to my headlight switch, I want to check and make sure that the wiring to the headlights is in good condition. There's no loose ends there. Now down to the frame, and I'm going to follow it all the way back, everything that's mounted to the frame. First here is the steering box. The steering box is securely mounted and there's no leaks associated with any of the wires or hoses going to and from it. Carrying on, checking to ensure that all these hoses are in good condition. And they appear to be in good condition, to the best of my knowledge. Right along here, this is my steering column. So I want to grab that steering column and give it a little wiggle. Ensure that the universal joints at this end and at the top are secure. There's no wiggle. The steering wheel does move slightly back and forth if I wiggle it this way. Carrying on along the frame, I've come to the shock mount on this side, the upper shock mount. Grab it and give it a wiggle. Ensure that it's nice and tight. Carrying on down the frame, checking all the heads, the nuts and bolts on there. Ensure that there's no signs of damage there. Going to move down now a little bit down into my suspension system. And same as we did on the other side, we're going to check the springs, the spring hangers, the alignment of the springs, and ensure that there's no cracks on the springs. Going down to the leaf springs as we did on the other side. Checking the hangers, the spring hangers, checking along the springs to ensure that there's no cracked springs or misaligned springs. Also, when I come to this part here, there's a shock, and I want to check the lower shock mount and ensure that it's secure as well. Next is the U-bolts. Give them a little tap with the hammer to ensure that they're nice and tight. Continuing on, checking the alignment of the springs and ensuring that there's no cracks from the springs as well. Now, next I've got down here, coming off the steering box, the steering linkage. Okay, I want to check that steering linkage and ensure that it's nice and tight. Part of the steering linkage, I don't know if you can see it or not, is any of the nuts that are associated with steering linkage are called castle nuts. Castle nuts are cut out on the top to resemble, they would resemble the top of a castle where they would have gun turrets. And what that's there for is so that once the nut has been tightened, they can insert a cotter pin, and that would ensure that that nut does not back off at all. And you'll see them on all parts of the steering linkage. Okay? So we want to check all the linkage and ensure it's nice and tight. The cotter pins are in place back here. The axle, the front axle is in good condition. And back here, part of that other steering linkage, which is our tie rod end, we'll give it a grab and make sure it's in good condition as well. Next, I'm going to come out to my brake chamber. The air line going to the brake chamber must be flexible again. Okay? Securely mounted at both ends. Check the brake chamber, ensure that the brake chamber is securely mounted. Then we're going to check the brake adjustment again. Taking my brake buddy, placing it over top of the brake, the slack adjuster, pulling on it and checking the adjustment on it. We're looking for a half to a maximum of 3/4 of an inch. As necessary, we would adjust those brakes. These seem to be fine. Next thing I'm going to do is check the inside of the wheels, check the inside of the rim, the tire, checking for any signs of damage on the tire. Next thing, top of the tire, we're checking to ensure that it's wearing evenly and there's ample tread there. Go from there to the outside of the tire, checking for any signs of damage on the outside of the tire. From there to the rim, check the rim, ensure there's no signs of damage, check all the lug nuts, and ensure they're all secure as well. And again, same on this side, if that hub wasn't there, we would check the oil in that hub on a weekly basis. Okay, once we're finished under the hood, next step is to lower the hood. Ensure that there's nobody around the hood when you lower it. Simply say clear, and then lower the hood. Do not let the hood slam down, control it all the way down into position. Once it's down, come around to the side and lock both sides in place. Come around to the side, lock your hood locks in position, ensure that that hood can't move once it's locked down. The next step would be to do an in-cab check as well as the in-cab air. Now we're going to enter the cab. Please remember, before you enter the cab, if you've got these greasy gloves on, take them off. In consideration of other people that are going to use the truck after you, let's keep everything clean. Take them off before entering. When you're entering the truck, try and remember at least 3 points attached to the truck at all times, prevent you from slipping and falling and hurting yourself getting in. Once you're inside, first thing I want to do is identify that my air gauges are actually holding air, which would tell me that the one-way check valves are actually working fine. Next thing I'm going to do is start up the vehicle. When I start the vehicle, the first thing I'm going to look for is to ensure that my oil pressure comes up within 10 to 15 seconds or so. After that, I want to check and make sure that the battery or the alternator is charging properly. So I'll check those two gauges immediately upon starting the vehicle. All right, depress the clutch, turn the key. There's no throttle necessary on a diesel engine. It's fuel injected, so just start it up. Once the vehicle is started, I'm going to check the oil. The oil pressure has come up immediately and my battery is charging. Once that's done, I can take my foot off the clutch and we'll carry on. Next step is to, while I'm building up the air pressure because I've drained it from my wet tank, I'm going to do an in-cab check, which simply means I'm going to check everything inside the cab, starting with this window on this side, ensuring that the window rolls up and down and the glass is in good condition. Next, going to the dash, checking all the gauges on the dash. Ahead, again, now I've got turn signals. I want to turn on all my lights so I can check the signal lights, left-hand signal light indicator on the inside, the right-hand side. Next, check the four-way flashers, and they're working as well. Once that's done, I'll check the high beam indicator, and that's working as well. Alright, coming down to the other gauges, ensuring that everything seems to be in place. To the steering wheel, checking the steering wheel for play, ensuring it's tight, and then the electric horn in the center. Just give it a toot as well. Going back to my dash, checking all the gauges. I've got an air gauge here, I've got an application gauge, and various other gauges on the dash, so we're just going to check. Down here you have some other knobs. This one here happens to be the panel lights, so we twist them just to ensure that the panel lights do work, that they dim and they come back on again. Going down a little lower is to my heater and defroster. I'm going to turn it on defrost, turn on the heat, and turn the fan on. Once that's on, I'm going to check with my hand above to ensure that the air is flowing on my windshield and the windshield will clear. Lower it down now to the heater part and check and make sure I have air flowing down below, and that seems to be working fine. Next, going over here to my lights. All the light switches are working. All these other switches, some of them pertain to you, some of them don't. So primarily we're looking at the lights. Okay, these other switches are in their position. Right here is another knob, and that's my windshield wiper. I want to check the windshield wipers, and if I push that knob, the windshield wiper washers come on. We want to check those as well. Alright, on the dash you have some other toggle type switches. This one here says air suspension. Because it's an air suspended vehicle, it has two positions, an inflate position and a normal position, or a dipstick. Okay? Check and ensure that this is in the normal position. Going over to the fifth wheel for the fifth wheel lock. Ensure that it is locked in position. Down below we have a differential lock, and ensure that it's in the unlocked position. Carrying on along the dashboard here, come to my glove compartment, check and ensure that I have my registration paper for the vehicle, as well as my pre-trip book, because that has to be filled out. What I'm going to do is leave my pre-trip book up on the dashboard so that I won't forget to fill it out when we're done. Going across to the far door, I would check and ensure that the windows on the passenger side is working properly. Checking seat belts on this side as well. Coming to the back of the vehicle on the cab, I want to check and make sure my dome light is working. So I flip it on and off. Continue over to my side, ensure that my seat belt is working. And it seems to be working just fine. The only thing left here is my windshield. The windshield is already clear. I checked it earlier and it is clear. No signs of damage on it. The visors are all, there's nothing loose or nothing that can fly down. That completes the in-cab part of the check. Basically all you're doing is checking everything inside the cab. At this point, the air pressure is now built up to maximum. We're going to start our in-cab air check, and this is for a Class 1 vehicle. Once the air is up to maximum, the next thing I'm going to do is release all the brakes, both the tractor and the trailer. The tractor one is the yellow button, and the red one is the trailer button. Once that's done, I'll notice that my gauge has dropped slightly, which is natural. Next thing I'm going to do, and when it's at maximum pressure, what that identifies is that the governor has put the compressor into the unloading stage. At that time, the compressor is cooling, nothing else. Next, I want to check and ensure that the governor will cause the compressor to start pumping again. Simply by lowering the pressure to approximately 80 to 85 psi with the engine still running, I should see the gauges start building pressure again. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, we're at about 85 psi. I'm going to watch the gauge and see that it starts building pressure. And I identify now that the gauges have started to build pressure. At this point, I can tell my examiner that the governor has caused the compressor to start pumping. Next thing, I'm going to continue lowering my pressure to 60 psi or until the low air warning comes on. Okay, the low air warning has come on at 60 psi. You may be able to hear it. It is a buzzer, and I also have a red light up here showing me that it's on. At that point, I'm going to continue fanning it down until the red button pops up, which is the trailer. The trailer will dynamite due to low air pressure. Okay, the trailer brakes have come on along with the tractor brakes. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes just the red button will pop out. No big deal if both of them do come out. At this point, I'm going to shut off the engine so that we can get out of the vehicle and go to the trailer and ensure that the brakes have actually dynamited on the trailer. That's going to require a physical check of the brakes. Okay, let's get out. Alright, now that we know that the trailer brakes have dynamite, we're going to just ensure that they have by checking them. Put my wrench on and check. The brakes do not move. That tells me that the brakes have actually applied due to low air pressure. Check the other side, and they're tight as well. Alright, next thing to do is to leave from underneath here, go up and disconnect my air lines on the way back up to the tractor. Now what I want to do is disconnect my air lines. Start with the supply line, disconnect it, and disconnect the service line as well. Place them down so that they're not going to land in the dirt or anything. Then we're going to go up to the cab of the vehicle, make a brake application, and ensure that there's no leaks coming from these disconnected lines. That would tell me that my tractor protection system is operating properly. Once I enter the truck, next thing I'm going to do is ensure that my spring brakes are released by pushing the yellow button in. And then I'm going to make a full brake application. What I'm going to listen for is any air leaks coming from the disconnected glad hands. Hear no air leaks coming from the disconnected glad hands, tells me that my tractor protection valve is working properly. Done deal. So we've checked to ensure that there is no leaks by making a brake application. Now it's time to reconnect the lines. Before you reconnect the lines, always check to ensure that the seals on both the glad hands on this side and the trailer side are in good condition. Make sure that they're not folded over, cracked, or damaged in any way. If they're wet, simply wipe them off and then connect them. Start with the two glad hands at a 90 degrees to each other, and then a simple movement downwards will lock them into position. We'll try and do that here. I'm going to put the seals together and the glad hands at a 90-degree angle to each other. Simply pulling down and reconnecting the lines so they're nice and tight. Next, we're going to go back to the cab of the truck. Once we're inside the truck, we're going to build up the air pressure from 50 to 90 in less than 3 minutes. And that's ensuring that the compressor is operating within specifications. As the same as anything, when we first build up the pressure, check the oil pressure and check the battery. Now we'll watch the gauges. As soon as the first needle hits 50 psi, I'm going to start timing it. Alright, we're at 50 psi and I'm timing it now. 50 to 90 must build within 3 minutes. You can also do that at a high idle, approximately 1,000 RPM. We've reached 90 maximum pressure. The governor's put the compressor into the unloading stage. We're going to shut off the engine. Next step from here would be to turn on all my lights and start our exterior mechanical walk around, starting with the lights at the front. Alright, now that we've done the inside, we're going to step out and start with the outside. I'm going to start by checking all the lights on the cab, checking the windshield coming down the grill. I want to check all the lights, make sure they're secure, check the grill and ensure that it's secure. So check the lights here, the left-hand turn signal is working properly. From there, I'm going to go down to the bumper, grab the bumper, ensure that it's secure as well. A little bit lower to the license plate, check the number on the license plate, make sure it's valid. Also want to know the number of the plate so that I can make sure it's the same as the number on the back of the plate, and also identify it with my registration. Alright, I've got a city plate here, and now that the engine has been running, what I want to also do is check underneath the vehicle for any fluid leaks. No fluid leaks there. It's time to carry on, starting with the signal light here, down the side of the vehicle, checking for any body damage here. This wheel and tire assembly we already checked, so we'll carry on. Checking the hood latch and ensure that it's secure as well. Next thing I'm going to do is check the mirrors. Please note that whenever I touch part of the body or part of the chrome or anything else, the one glove comes off at least. Alright? Check the supports, make sure they're secure. Check the mirrors, the glass, and ensure it's in good condition. The windows on the door, good condition. Yeah, we'll check and see if they roll up and down as well. Close the door, look for any damage here. Grab the handle and ensure that the handle is secure. While I'm doing that, I'm also going to check the steps. Make sure the steps are secure as well. Down a little bit lower here, we have the fuel, and I'm going to check the fuel tank as well. And if I can't see it, I will use my flashlight that you should have with you while you're doing your pre-trip as well. Look into there and ensure that you have ample fuel for the day. Please don't use a lighter. Alright. Carrying on. We're going to continue with the rest of the body of the vehicle. Checking to ensure the vehicle has no damage. Take a good look at it. Everything is secure. Down here is my fuel tank. I want to check the fuel tank, make sure it's secure. And if it's visible to me, I would like to check the straps on the tank as well, to ensure that there is a rubber gasket between the tank strap and the tank itself. And it all appears to be secure. Once you get in here, what you'd like to do is check inside for any emergency equipment you may have. This one here, we have the fire extinguisher. Check the date on the fire extinguisher, make sure it's valid. Also check to make sure that the pin is securely in its place. Other things in here are my reflectors. Set of emergency reflectors that you need. Okay. Know how far they should be placed, every 30 meters. Also in here what I have is various tools, plus I have the windshield washer fluid container in here. Check and make sure it's secure. and no apparent leaks with it. All right, we'll leave that, carry on. Down the side of the truck, grab handles are secure. Left-hand turn signal is working here. Next thing is my battery box on this truck is right here. Check and ensure that the battery box itself is secure, and then you would inform your examiner that the batteries are checked once a week by the